Dear you, long time no see, y'all. If you're new here, my name is Juliani Ayala, and if you are not, welcome back to the Sincerely Giuliani channel, a channel dedicated to making personal letters just for you all. I am so happy to finally be behind this mic. It has been a minute, and I know y'all are probably like, damn, she quit already. She just started. Listen, y'all, life has been lifing. I will say that. But today's conversation is going to be about something that not only I have been dealing with, but it's also going to be the start of a conversation that I feel like a lot of us have been dealing with. And as you've seen from the title, the topic today is imposter syndrome. And if you don't know what imposter syndrome is, it is basically a psychological phenomenon where one doubts their abilities and their accomplishments despite of evidence of success. Not only am I going to be talking about what prompted my pause back in November, but I'm also going to have a conversation of what I believe can trigger one's imposter syndrome and the different factors that play into the role of this mindset that we all have. When I started Sincerely Giuliani, it was an impulsive decision, a good impulsive decision, because I'm one that overthinks a lot. I'm someone who is very doubtful, and sometimes I do have a negative mindset, and I'll be honest about that. And when I was coming into this episode, a lot of people were telling me, like, Juliana, you do not owe anybody an explanation. You don't have to put everything on the internet, and you don't have to say things that you don't have to say. And while that's completely fair, again, it would be very hypocritical of me to say the Sincerely Giuliani channel is rooted in truth, authenticity, and vulnerability, and I can't give you guys that. Does that make sense? And I believe that talking about what happened in November is going to explain a lot, and it's going to give you guys a better understanding of who I am as a person. But it's also going to spark a conversation that I think is really important. And I'm sure you guys gathered now that back in November, if you haven't seen, actually, I came to film what was supposed to be episode 4, and I didn't deliver. It's a little embarrassing, but it's life, okay? But I want to be completely transparent that the month of November is an extremely hard month for me. It is the anniversary of many, specifically for my cousin's death anniversary. And there was just a lot of things happening. And it wasn't all bad. I think there were also a lot of new changes and new blessings that I was facing in my life, especially that week, where my full attention was not on this podcast. But what happened after, I was completely disappointed in myself. When I came to film episode 4, I came in, I was super excited, and I was actually really disappointed because that conversation, that topic was a really good topic, but we're going to have to get back to that another time. But I came to the studio, I had really good notes, I had a really good topic, and as the camera started rolling, I couldn't get my words out. I literally sat there and I just kept stuttering. I kept talking, but my mind was elsewhere. There was just so many doubts and negativity in my mind, and I just couldn't deliver the way that I thought I could have. And it really sucks because that one slip up led me to believe that I was not capable of being a podcaster. I was not capable of being the content creator that I really truly believe that I can be. But in that moment, because of one slip up, I fully convinced myself that I was a failure, that I am not cut out to be anything. As you all have probably gathered now, I was dealing with imposter syndrome. I was someone who at the time could not balance the outside noise, and I could not gather myself, and instead that led me to shut down, and instead that led me to believe that I was a failure. For me to tell myself that I was a failure was insane. So that's when I knew I needed to take a moment, step back, reflect, and come back stronger. Okay, enough of the trauma dumping. We're going to get into what I believe can trigger someone's imposter syndrome. And these are all topics that, yes, I've researched. And also, these are the three main topics that I feel like resonated with me. And I feel like I'm comfortable enough to talk with and share with you all. But I also want to say that imposter syndrome is so common. Whether you know that you have it, or maybe you're starting to realize, damn, like, I may actually be dealing with that right now. These are conversations that I am not sharing just based off my experiences, but also conversations that's been happening around me. You know, I've been speaking with 20-something-year-olds and people who are slightly older, slightly younger, who just feel like they don't feel like they are meant to be where they are now. They feel like they're not doing enough. They don't feel like they are enough. And it's just so sad. And I know what that feels like. You know, we're living in such unprecedented times where there's so many draining factors in the world, whether if it's politically, economically, socially. We are living in a hard time. And it's so easy for us to be cooped up in our phones and we start comparing ourselves to everybody else. And this is why I wanted to have the conversation about imposter syndrome today. So the three main talking points that I researched and that I'm comfortable enough to share with you all about what I believe can trigger your imposter syndrome is number one, the intersectionality of your identity and your background. Number two being your 20-something. Okay, whether you're a little older than that or a little older than that, a little younger than that, your age. And three, the comparison culture that society and social media implements. So I think the first talking point that we're going to discuss today about your identity and your background is going to be the main factor into one's imposter syndrome. And I say this because I am someone that believes how you were raised, where you were raised, and the morals and the principles that you grew up on all play a factor into how you show up today into society, whether if that's in a workplace, whether if that's in your social life, etc. So let's say, for example, gender. Okay, you are someone that identifies as a woman and you're working in a male-dominated workspace. What does that look like? Well, as a woman, you are more than likely to face significant challenges compared to your male counterparts simply because you are a woman. And not saying that men are immune to significant challenges, but it's not rocket science. It's not a lie. It's just the reality that women are more likely to face sexual harassment or discrimination, gender stereotypes solely because they are a woman. And I think society also plays a factor into this as well because women are already deemed as emotional, weak, or incapable of doing a lot of things, especially in male workplaces because they are a woman. Again, not rocket science, not a lie. These are the facts. So how that can influence one's imposter syndrome is that woman is probably feeling like they don't even deserve to be working there because they don't feel like they are equal to their male counterparts. And let's say also, for example, race. You have a black woman and you have a white woman. Where they share a common identity is that they both identify as a woman. That's their common ground. They're more likely to face gender discrimination because they are women. However, where ends do not meet is their race. One's black, one's white. Black women are 10 times more likely to face significant challenges on top of gender stereotypes because not only are they discriminated because they are women, they're also being discriminated because of the color of their skin. And I feel like as a woman of color myself, I've had to experience stuff like this where I know I'm entering spaces where I have to code switch, where I have to kind of put on an act to prove to myself that I am fit to be in this position. I am fit to be in wherever I am in that moment. So let's say me, for example, I identify as a woman, I am a Latina, and I am probably going to be the youngest person in this new job that I'm about to be entering. And at first, my mindset was, okay, this is going to be a culture switch for me. Not only am I probably going to be the youngest person there, but maybe I'm hoping that I'm not going to be the only woman of color there. But these were my responses to a new job setting. But I had to sit back and tell myself that, well, you're in this space for a reason. And I think people are so quick to feel like they're undeserving or they're incapable of doing something because they don't fit in. But I'm trying to remind myself that that's a good thing. You know, you're there for a reason. You're there to not only prove to yourself that you are capable, but also maybe prove to other people that you are as well. But I think it's a natural response that so many people have. It's a mindset that we all have because of society, because of factors we cannot control. And I think using, like a woman versus man in the workspace and a black woman versus a white woman in the workspace, those are really good examples of the realities that people face in everyday lives and where you come from, things that you cannot control. Like these are natural responses that we have to society. All in all, to wrap up the first main talking point, I wrote something down that I think is really important, and I want you all to understand that imposter syndrome can hit harder when your identity and your background have historically been excluded in certain spaces, making you feel like you have to prove you belong. The lack of representation, the stereotypes, the microaggressions can reinforce the feeling of not feeling like you're enough. For many people, imposter syndrome isn't just an insecurity, it's also a response to environments that were never built with them in mind. And I think in this day and age too, it's extremely scary to live in the unknown, especially for people of color. You know, the racial discrimination with everything happening with ICE and everything happening with families being ripped apart or people being racially targeted because of where they come from in their background. That is all the unfortunate reality that is happening. But these are all factors that play into the role of how you show up in these spaces. And I know it probably sounds repetitive right now, but it's going to also explain living in your 20s, your second main talking point for today. And I think not only about where you grew up and how you grew up and what's happening around, I think also being in your 20 somethings is a big question mark. And I say that because I know the other generations also have said this too. It is hard trying to be an adult right now. And Gen Zers, we do have it 10 times harder, or I personally believe that we have it 10 times harder because of the economic and the political factors that are putting a lot of pressure on us, I shall say. And also being in your 20s just in general, there's a lot of firsts. You have your first big girl, big boy job. You have bigger financial responsibilities. And I think we're just so naturally hard on ourselves right now in this day and age because we feel like being in our 20s, we have to get it together when in reality, we don't got nothing together. In reality, we just have to just relax. Okay? And this is a reminder that to myself mainly that I have to give myself grace. And I think you all have to give yourself grace too. That accomplishment that you already made is probably on someone else's bucket list. It's probably on their 2026 goals. Okay? And I remember when I started this podcast, I came in and one of the first conversations and insecurities that I had were not having a full-time job. And now it's like all I had to do was be patient because fast forward a couple months later, here I am with my first big girl job that I'm going to be starting in 2 weeks. Okay. And I think it just comes to show that in life we are all on different paces, but it's so quick to be in your 20s and feel like you have to have it together because that is just the mindset that society puts on us, that we're being an adult and we have to get our things together in order to be an adult. But in reality, no. Okay, baby? No. But it all ties down to the simple fact that we are all scared of the unknown in our 20s. And that can influence our imposter syndrome because it's so easy to compare our lives to other people. And it's so easy to feel like you have to have it together when in reality, you don't. Okay? Nobody got it together. And it doesn't even have to be because you're 20 something. There's 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds who also feel like this too. Okay? It's not just you all. But I think the beautiful part of life is that you grow. And I think growth is supposed to be uncomfortable, but it also means that you're meant to be where you are right now. I think this is a good transition to kind of wrap up talking point number 2. And all in all, it's to say that you're not an imposter. You're in transition. It's okay to ask for feedback But remember that feedback doesn't mean failure. I think if we want to get out of this imposter syndrome and we want to get out of this negative mindset, we have to be okay with criticism. Okay, we have to be okay with the uncomfortable, with the unknown. And it's all obviously a learning lesson for all of us. But as we go and as we grow older, we have to start asking questions. We have to get out of our comfort zone and we have to celebrate the small wins. I feel like we don't do that enough. I feel like we're just so stuck on what's next that we didn't even realize what's happening now. We didn't even realize what we did in the past. We have to give ourselves some credit. We got to give ourselves some grace, y'all. Life is hard. But I think it's completely understandable to feel like you're never getting out of this hole. And I think, for example, a lot of 20-something-year-olds were living in a time where we feel like, damn, will I ever get out of my parents' house? Will I ever get a job out of the hundreds of jobs that I applied for? Will I ever hear back from them? And I do want to say that I know how hard it is to not compare yourself to the people around you. And I feel like the conversations that I've had about imposter syndrome with the people around me, whether they're friends, whether they're family members, whether if they're people I actually just met, honestly, like there be people that I talk to, and it's a universal mindset where we just feel like we're not good enough. And I say this because now we can transition it into the comparison culture. So talking point number 3, the comparison culture that society and social media influences. And like I said, it is a universal feeling to feel like you're not good enough because you're so quick to compare to what Sally is doing from high school. Sally got 3 kids and she's married and maybe on her second marriage, and you're like 22. And I think it's a really not cause Sally really do be out here. I know a couple Sallys, and it's no hate to y'all. I just when I open my phone and I see that somebody from my high school, has a kid or they're married or engaged or they're traveling, I'm just like, damn, am I doing something wrong? But that is life. Sorry, Sally. Sally, I'm sorry, girl. Pop them kids, girl. Do what you got to do. But all in all, it's so easy to watch and compare and feel like we're behind when we see people our age, slightly older, slightly younger, doing something that we think is better than what we're doing right now. And I think also we feel like, because like, let's say for example, like when I see people younger than me traveling, I feel like, damn, like that's what I should be doing. I am 22 years old and I am not traveling. Well, baby, you're not traveling because you're broke. That's why. Maybe they got the money. But I also have to remind myself that my time is going to come. But it's so easy to compare your life to somebody else's highlight reel. You see what I'm saying? And this is the pressure that society and also social media implements on us. We feel like we have to have an aesthetic routine. We feel like we have to travel, do this because that's what you're meant to do in your 20s. You have your whole life ahead of you. It's not just your 20s. Your 20s isn't your only time to travel. And this is also a time for you all to remind yourselves that everyone is at a different pace. Okay? Everyone is at a different pace. I am not popping out 3 kids like Sally is. I'm not doing that right now. But Sally might be the happiest girl in the world. Not me. Okay? Not me. Somebody out there is probably looking at me and is probably like, damn, I want to do what she's doing. I want to start a podcast. I want to do this. I want to do that. And you have to remind yourself where you are now, like I said before, is probably in someone's 2026 list of goals. Okay? We are confusing potential with fraud because we're too busy comparing our lives to somebody else's highlight reel. Like I said before, it's so easy to get drained in like the scrolling and the dooming where we feel like we're behind because somebody is doing something better. But that's also the delusion and the illusion that society or social media what's the word, Giuliani? This is also the social. I'm finding it. That is what social media wants you to see. That is what social media is. They want you to see the best moments from other people. It's the truth. So, to wrap up talking point number 3, social media creates this false idea that success looks effortless and fast, but we're only being shown people's best moments, big wins, and aesthetic routines. This leads us to believe that our journey is messy or slow or unworthy of acknowledgement, when in reality, we are meant to be where we are right now. And I'm going to keep saying this. Everything happens for a reason. You are where you are right now because this is going to make sense in the future. Where you are right now, it's not a mistake. You didn't make a mistake. I truly believe every decision that you make is not a mistake. It's a lesson or it's a blessing. Okay? That is just how the cookie crumbles. My throat is dry. Let me take a second. Whew, y'all. We talked about a lot. Today. But I'm especially proud of myself for not giving up. And I think the topic of imposter syndrome is a really good conversation to have after the break that I had. And I remember coming into this episode, like today's episode, and I was nervous. I was so nervous. Actually, I'm lying. I wasn't that nervous. I was being a little dramatic. I was actually more calm than I expected, but I still obviously had like my doubts and my fears in my mind. Like, it's just normal for me to have. Like, I'm an overthinker. But imposter syndrome was a conversation that I always wanted to have with you guys. But I feel like it was only right to come back with this topic because not only did it explain what prompted my pause, but it also is a really good time for all of us to have, a really good conversation for all of us to have. I just feel like I can't get my words together because there's been so many conversations in between November and now where we're all just feeling like, what the hell is happening in the world? Am I even going to make it out alive? And I will say this though, imposter syndrome doesn't mean you stop. It means you care. Growing is a strength, but growing is also a privilege. Not a lot of people can get out of a negative mindset. Not a lot of people will ever get out of that mindset because they don't feel like they are capable of changing. But that is where the power lands in your hand. You can keep telling yourself, I'm never enough, I'm never enough, I'm never enough. And you will never be enough because you're not allowing yourself to grow. Caring means you persevere. And being 20-something doesn't mean you're behind. It means you're beginning. Remember, take it easy on yourselves, love yourselves, and also remind yourselves that there are things that are not in your control. And you have to give yourself credit for all that you have already done. Okay? Okay. Well, that wraps up today's letter, y'all. I am so grateful for you all to have made it this far if you did. I appreciate you all for your support. I know a lot of you guys were like, are you okay? Yes, I'm okay. Your girl was just having a little episode. But I'm so happy to be back. And like I always say, take what resonates, leave what doesn't, and always tell a friend to tell a friend because we still have a lot to talk about. Okay? Okay. My throat is still dry. It's the weather. If you haven't already, go like, comment, share, and subscribe. And as always, tell a friend to tell a friend. Until next time, sincerely, Giuliani. Bye. I hope that was a good episode. It got no choice to be.